So after the British Grand Prix, I gave every driver on the grid, all 20 drivers on the grid, a grade from A all the way down to F, because that marks the halfway point of the season. That was round 12 out of 24. But in this summer break, someone came with a very good idea. How about I actually go a bit more in depth? And I thought, yeah, great idea. Let's do a video. Let's do a 5-minute segment on each team, how they performed, and also how the drivers have performed too. So I'll give a grade to how the team's doing and how the two drivers are individually doing. I'll give a mention to what my grading would be for that. And some of my grades might have actually changed from my mid-season grades because we have had 2 more rounds, and I've had some very insightful comments as well from people, which has kind of given me a new perspective really on how I rated them really. So yeah, guys, without further ado, here are the mid-season F1 team grades. Now we're going to go from worst to first. We're going to start with Sauber and then we're going to end up at Red Bull. We're going to go in the Constructors' Championship order. So yeah, I hope you have fun with this one. I've definitely had some fun making it as well. Let's get started. So we're going to start with Sauber. Now Sauber have had an awful season so far. Let's not get away from that fact. They are the only Formula 1 team in the championship to not score a single point. Both Guan Yu Zhou and Valtteri Bottas have failed to score any points during this season so far. They comfortably have the worst car on the grid. The positives for Sauber really is the fact they've got this Audi sponsorship and money coming in. Apparently though, they already have some money coming in, so they don't really have an excuse for producing such a poor car. I don't really blame Zhou Guan Yu or Valtteri Bottas that much for their performances this season. Yes, they haven't been great, either of them, I don't think, but something that can't be denied is that Bottas has been the better of the two drivers, and this is one of the driver grades that I was referring to earlier when I said that, you know, one of them has changed since I actually did my previous mid-season driver grades, and that's that I think Bottas deserves a higher grade than Guan Yu Zhou. You look at the head-to-head of them so far this season, Bottas finishing 9 times ahead of Zhou, Zhou managing it just 5 times ahead of Bottas. But in terms of Sauber, in terms of their kind of performance this season and the outlook for the rest of this season, it's not looking good. The closest they've come to scoring points have been during the Bahrain Grand Prix at the very start of the season, where Zhou finished in 11th. The only reason why Zhou is above Bottas in the championship, Bottas 21st and last unfortunately in the championship, below even Logan Sargent, which does not make for good reading. And also Zhou got 9th place during the Chinese Grand Prix sprint as well, so only the top 8 score points during the sprint, so he missed out there. But Sauber don't even look like they're going to score points this season. I mean, if you look at their recent results, it's embarrassing to say the least. The closest they've come recently to scoring points was Zhou in Spain in 13th. But since then, during the last 4 rounds, they haven't finished higher than 15th. And in a 20-car race where you're 2 of the cars and there are cars retiring and getting disqualified and stuff like that, it's not a good look. It's really not a good look. And even operationally from a team point of view, things like the pit stops being really slow earlier on in the season, like we had some embarrassingly slow pit stops that could have cost them points potentially. But even then, the pace of the car, it's just not there. The main green shoots of optimism really for Sauber is the fact they've got Nico Hülkenberg coming in next year. We don't know who's going to be in that second seat alongside him. It could be Bottas, it could be Zhou, it could be somebody else, someone like Bortoleto, like has been rumoured. And the fact that I'm talking about 2025 as a positive thing for them really shows that there's not really much hope for them in 2024. They might score the odd point here and there, but they're still more than likely going to finish bottom of the championship. And they've had, like I said, they haven't really shown any signs recently of getting close to a points finish in Formula 1. So yeah, it's pretty embarrassing for Sauber. They've obviously got, they've got the likes of Mattia Binotto coming in, and also on top of that, and they've also got Jonathan Wheatley coming in as a team principal as well for the team. Those are positive things for the future for sure. But right now, Sauber, in terms of a grade, in terms of what I'm going to grade them, I really can't give them much better than an F. This season has been pretty much the definition of a failure for them. They've scored no points. They haven't showed like they're going to score points. Yes, they've come close a few times, but even then you have to say they've been slightly lucky to get that close. In terms of the two drivers, I've given Bottas a C because, like I said, he's resoundingly beaten Zhou, especially in qualifying, which at the moment, the Saubers are just pretty much competing against themselves and also the Williams of Logan Sargent, and that's kind of it. Zhou, I've given a D. I don't think he's that bad of a driver, but I don't think he's going to be renewed for 2025 either. If they're going to keep on one of them drivers for next year, it's going to be Bottas, but even Bottas I wouldn't say is that safe, which I think is a little harsh on the guy. I think he is a good driver. He's obviously someone who on his day challenged Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. Obviously his day was not that often, but you're competing against Lewis Hamilton, so it's a pretty difficult yardstick to measure up against. But yeah, those are my grades, guys, for Sauber. F overall, because this season's been a failure, but I think there's positivity for the team going forwards into the future, for future seasons, but right now in 24, it is literally a failure for them, unfortunately. Okay, so next up we have Williams, 9th place overall in the Constructors' Championship. It's fair to say, if you just take it on a points basis, that Williams have been disappointing this year. You know, it really seemed in 2023 that they could have kicked on and improved, but I think it's fair to say that that car has underperformed compared to what we hoped it was going to be. Just 4 points on the board for Williams, thanks to a pair of 9th place finishes by Alex Albon, one in Monaco and the other one during the British Grand Prix as well. The car does seem decent in some weekends when, you know, you've got free practice and they do some good times. It also seems good when you've got, you know, a relatively high speed track. That seems to be where Williams do better. You know, Albon was in the window to be able to get some points at places like Belgium, but unfortunately it's just not worked out for them. This season's been a real disappointment, and I think the main takeaway they're going to have is, you know, Australia was embarrassing for them. Yes, Albon managed to get 11th place in Sargent's car, but the fact that they didn't have spare parts to repair the car after Albon crashed it in practice because of organisational issues, things like having Microsoft Excel showing where their parts are, using it as kind of an inventory management, you know, that shows how much of an uphill task James Vowles has got to turn around Williams' fortunes. And a little bit like Sauber, who I just reviewed as well, you know, their real optimism comes for next year. They've got Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz in the car, which is an incredible driver pairing. A real coup for Sainz to drop down the grid and go to Williams. But the fact remains is that Williams have ultimately disappointed. They have come close on scoring points on a number of occasions. Like I said, you know, Logan Sargent, he got 11th place at Silverstone. It could have been a double points finish for Williams there. Albon managed to get 11th place at Saudi Arabia and Australia too. They've just been kind of nearly there. Albon dragging that car up as far as it can go, but even his skills are not enough, it seems, this season to be able to score the odd point and get up to where they were in the championship. So they have ultimately disappointed. They have dropped down the grid. It's a massive task for them to catch even Alpine. I think at this stage, I just don't see it. I feel like Ocon and Gasly are scoring points consistently enough just to ward off that threat. And catching the likes of Red RB and Haas, absolutely out of the question. So I feel like it's been disappointing for Williams overall. For the two drivers, I mean, Albon has absolutely destroyed Sargent this season, as you'd kind of expect, to be fair. Although interestingly, Sargent's sprint record is better. He's managed to beat him twice out of the 3 sprints, but overall in the Grand Prix, where the real points are scored, a 10-2 advantage for Alex Albon. It's unbelievable, really, how much of a better driver he is. The disparity between those two is huge, and that's part of the reason why they've gone for Carlos Sainz next year. You know, I can't see Logan Sargent remaining in Formula 1 next year. I don't see a team to take a risk on him. But my overall grades for Williams, I'm giving Williams a D because they have been disappointing. You can't give them a C because they've not met expectations. Giving them an E, I think, is a little harsh because I think operationally, aside from Australia, operationally, tactics-wise and strategy-wise, they've not done too bad of a job. But I think a D is probably fair for them. Albon I've given a B because I feel like he has overperformed in that car at times. Not an A. I mean, last year I would have given him an A, to be honest, but this year I don't think he's quite been on that level. He's not scored points consistently enough to warrant that. Sargent I've given an E because I think an F would be too much. I think an F should be reserved for someone who has been fired. And I feel like he would have been fired by now in favour of Antonelli. If it was going to happen, it would have been announced by now. So, although when this video goes out, that might have changed. You never know. Formula 1's a very fast-paced environment. I think an E is absolutely fair. The guy has not scored any points. His team has scored all the points and is carrying that team. Is the only reason why they are above Sauber in the Constructors' Championship. So, yeah, there we go, guys. Those are my thoughts on Williams. A D overall. Yeah, let's move on to the next one. All right, Alpine. This is going to be fun. I mean, it's fair to say that Williams have, regressed since last year, but I think the team that's probably regressed the most since last year has to be Alpine. They started the season with, quite frankly, the worst car on the grid, and to their credit, they have improved it. Results have improved, and they did manage to score their first points of the season at the Miami Grand Prix. So they did improve, and they've had scored points since then. I mean, look at Pierre Gasly. He got a 4-race streak where he managed to score points in a row, which is impressive in that car, to say the least. But that being said, their highest finish of the season is 9th, which, given the dominance of Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari and Mercedes, best of the rest position now, if all those cars finish, is 9th. So you could say that 9th place is actually pretty good in that sense, but because of that, they've not scored big points, and it can't be understated that they are under risk of being overtaken by Williams. Their 8th place in the Constructors' Championship is not assured. They're currently sat on 11 points. They managed to get a sprint point, I think, as well on that. But then catching Haas and RB ahead, out of the question, I think. That gap's too much. Haas are on over double points of Alpine, and RB are on over triple. So it's really not comparable. The best that Alpine can hope for this season, I think, is 8th overall. And their results of late, I mean, Ocon did score a couple points at Belgium, but on the whole, recently, the last few races, they have dropped off a bit. And of course, we have to talk about the teammates, Gasly and Ocon, the mortal enemies. Ocon, crashing into Gasly at the Monaco Grand Prix, effectively being given the boot because of that. Their second driver is not yet set. They will get Gasly for next year. It's looking likely that they're going to get Jack Doohan as their second driver. Carlos Sainz was offered the position, but he turned them down to go to Williams, which really shows you the instability there. Bruno Famin has been removed as team principal. They've got Oliver Oakes coming in, which could be a good thing for them, but it just shows the instability again. They've not really got a long-term kind of vision there. And of course, there's rumours about not only the engine department being shut down at Viry-Châtillon in France, but also on top of that, the team actually selling up and leaving the sport altogether. So Renault might not be in Formula One at all in a couple seasons' time. So that just shows you the dark cloud that is over the team. The top drivers don't want to race for them, and yeah, so it's not been good for Alpine. I think overall their drivers for the most part have performed well. Just a point between Gasly and Ocon. Gasly on 6 points, Ocon on 5. They are very evenly matched, but I will give a different grade. I mean, this is something that got talked about in the comments as well. Someone said, you should grade Gasly and Ocon the same because they've got pretty much the same points, but I respectfully disagree from that, because at the end of the day, Alpine have got rid of Ocon, and there's a reason why they've done that, and it's because he's not a team player, and he's someone who literally crashed into his teammate. And for me, you have to get marked down for that. You can get some good grades in your class, but if you're getting detention all the time and missing lectures, it's not a good look. It's not a good look, is it? Then again, this is coming from me looking like this right now. But anyway, overall, I have given Alpine an E. I wouldn't say that it's been an F like Sauber. I wouldn't say that they've failed outright, but they have fallen massively short of expectations, and operationally they are a mess behind the scenes. Gasly I've given a C because I feel like he's done just enough overall. Ocon's performances, I've given him a D for that, because at the end of the day, like I said, he did crash into his teammate, which is poor. Overall, his actual performances have probably been good enough, but it's just that's a real black mark against his name. Like I said, you can perform, you can do well in class, you can get some good grades, but if you misbehave and throwing paper airplanes at your teacher and stuff, you're not going to get a good grade, are you? And that's what Ocon's done. Instead of throwing a paper airplane, he's thrown his car into Gasly's, and that's a pretty terrible analogy, but you know what I mean. Anyway, let's move on. Next one's up. Okay, so 7th overall in the Constructors' Championship right now is Haas. Now, Haas for me are arguably the most improved team this season. I think they're up there with McLaren for the most improved team of this season. I mean, they ended up getting last in the Constructors' Championship last season. This year, they're in 7th as it stands, and they could well get up into 6th by the end of the season, which if they get 6th and kind of best of the rest in a way, you might say that Aston Martin and best of the rest in 5th, but I think best of the rest in 6th for them would show a massive improvement. Ayo Komatsu has to take some huge credit for that, despite what Gunther Steiner says. Totally not bitter about it all. But yeah, he's done an incredible job. The strategy has been fantastic at times. At times, you could argue they've maybe gone a bit too far with some of the things they've been asking Kevin Magnussen to do, and we will get on to Kevin Magnussen, don't worry. But yeah, I mean, it's been incredible for Haas. Their car is where it deserves to be in the constructors. I feel like they've not been lucky particularly, but the fact that they've been doing this well is, it's no small part down to the team and how this change recently has affected them positively. Nico Hülkenberg at 2 has to take massive credit for Haas's uprise at the moment. I mean, it's an 11-2 race battle between Hülkenberg and Magnussen. The highlights of Hülkenberg's season coming in back-to-back 6th places at the Austrian and British Grand Prix, which has absolutely catapulted Haas up the standings. And in fact, Hülkenberg is only 2 points behind Lance Stroll, who's in a much better Aston Martin, in my opinion. So that just shows you the level to which Hülkenberg is performing. Hülkenberg also doing miracles in qualifying with the Haas car, putting it in places it absolutely does not deserve to be. Kevin Magnussen, his conduct at times on the track has been downright disgusting, to be honest with you. I feel like some of it has been down to what the teams have been telling him to do, like in Saudi Arabia, hold the pack up for Nico. It's really going to help him out, and that's fine. That's hard and fair racing for the most part. But there have been times when he's taken it too far as well, and most notably during the Miami sprint, where that was, if you look at my videos from back then on our Microsoft Start platform, because they're not on YouTube unfortunately, but if you go into Microsoft Start and look them up, I was not best pleased. I was not best pleased at all with what Magnussen was doing there. I do feel like the team has kind of told him to do that, but maybe took it a bit too far there. And he's been very lucky to avoid a race ban. Nobody will deny that. So yeah, Haas, one of the most improved teams. Hülkenberg in particular, elevating them up to that 7th place in the constructors, and they could well get 6th by the end of the season. Their results recently have been very impressive, to say the least. But what am I grading them? Well, I was to and froing about this one, to be honest with you. I was tempted to give them an A, but I will give them a B. If they beat RB and get up into 6th place by the end of the season, I'll give them an A. And I'll probably give Hülkenberg an A as well, because he would be the chief architect of that. Hülkenberg is also a driver that I was tempted to give an A grade for as well. He's been so impressive this season. I feel like a B is just about right though, because there have been some races when they have been anonymous, and to get an A grade for me, you have to be absolutely top of class to deserve that. But I can 100% see Hülkenberg getting an A grade by the end of the season. You look at some of the results as well this season. He's got 11th place in Japan, in Miami, in Imola, in Canada, in Spain. He's been so close to scoring points in those races as well, so close to scoring points in the vast majority of Grand Prix, but just falling short. So I'm going to give him a B. If I could give him a more specific grade, I'd give him a B+ for sure. He's just on the verge of an A. Magnussen, I've given a D. I mean, he is being replaced for next season by Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman. Obviously, Hülkenberg going to Audi, so he's leaving anyway. But yeah, I feel like he's been disappointing overall. His performances have been so far off of Hülkenberg. And yes, there have been reasons for that with the team tactics. Of course, I recognise that. But Magnussen's qualifying has been miles off what Hülkenberg's has been as well at times this season. So I'm going to give it a D overall. I think we might see the last of Kevin Magnussen in Formula 1 this season as well, which I think is a shame, because I do like the guy. He's one of the few opinionated Formula 1 drivers left. Some say for the worse, some say for the better. I say for the better because it gives me more stuff to talk about with you guys. So there we go, guys. That's what Haas is. On to RB next. Alright, up next we have RB, the newly rebranded AlphaTauri team, going to RB, aka VCarb, aka Toro Rosso, aka the second Red Bull team on the grid, the junior team as it were. Or are they a junior team? Because I have Daniel Ricciardo at 35 racing for them these days. So yeah, interesting one for sure. They finished in 6th, well, they are currently in 6th overall in the constructors standings, which for a second team in Formula 1, I'd say is a resounding success. They've not had the best seasons in the last couple of seasons or so. I think they were like all the way down in 9th not too long ago as well. But yeah, it's not been the best time with them recently. But this season, as the RB team, they've been doing a lot better. Yuki Tsunoda in particular pulling out some incredible results. 7th place in Australia, 7th place at Miami as well. Oh, not quite on the same wavelength as Tsunoda. He has had some standout results though. 4th place in the Miami sprint, although he got 15th in the Grand Prix, and also 8th place as his highest race finish, F1 race finish, in Canada as well. And he has got better a little bit as the season's gone on. I feel like he's done some impressive results. He's got a lot closer to Tsunoda, because early on it really was a big advantage to Tsunoda. For me, Yuki has been an impressive driver this season. He's showing the maturity that he really needs, and there is a point to be made. There is a viewpoint that says that, you know, Ricciardo's been a big part of that, really mentoring him and controlling him, his emotions and stuff like that, you know, really helping him with that. So there is that too. Overall, in the race results, Yuki Tsunoda edges it 8-5 ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. So there is that. I think Yuki has been the better driver. I think it's good that Red Bull are keeping, you know, Ricciardo on for the second half of the season, because there was doubt about that, of course. I think you have to say that RB have improved on their fortunes from last season. So with that in mind, I am giving them a B grade overall. And I'm also giving Tsunoda a B grade as well. I feel like at times he has outperformed that car. He has shown that, you know, he can take it really to the Aston Martins, especially early on in the season when Aston Martin weren't doing too bad at all, really. And things have changed since then, and we'll get on to Aston Martin next. That'll be an interesting one to figure out how they've done this season. I've given Ricciardo a C as well. I feel like he's done enough. I feel like he's been good enough. He's shown flashes of his old self. Overall, I would like to see some more strong points finishes. I think if he doesn't get a couple more 6th and 7th and stuff like that, because his highest actual race finish this season so far is 8th place, which isn't too great. Tsunoda scoring 22 points to Ricciardo's 12. But yeah, I feel like they've done the most they can with the package they've got, so I've given the team a B. I feel like if they, I mean, it's pretty unlikely, but if they manage to catch Aston Martin, for example, then they get an A, because then it's like you are absolutely, without a doubt, the best team in the midfield. As it is, 6th is impressive. It is above what you'd expect from RB, and it's an improvement compared to last season, and it's good that they're keeping their drivers on for next season, for the rest of this season. Beyond though, you're probably going to look at Liam Lawson replacing Daniel Ricciardo, but we'll see. That's if, buts and maybes. I think Ricciardo needs to get some more strong points finishes to maintain his C grade, otherwise he'd probably have to go down and disappointing where Tsunoda is beating him so resoundingly. So yeah, on to Aston Martin next. We're into the top half of the grid, or are we? Because it's Aston Martin in 5th. Now I say are we because they've not really had a good season at all. They are miles off it. And there have been occasions when Haas and RB, quite frankly, have been as fast, if not faster than during some race weekends. They were really coming into this season on, you know, a bit of a damp squib really in 2023, because their ending to their season was so poor. They dropped down so much compared to where they were at the start. This season could renewed optimism give them some better performances and better results. It kind of seemed like it might have done early on in the season. Alonso got some good results for them. 5th in Saudi Arabia, 6th in Japan, 6th in Canada, but at the end of the day, this is miles off where they were in 23. In 23, Alonso was getting podiums regularly. He was getting some second places as well when Sergio Perez was not doing particularly well. He was even in the window to win some races as well. That's how good he was doing in that car, but not even the absolute legend that is Fernando Alonso. I mean, say what you want about his team politics and how he makes the wrong move at the wrong time when it comes to going to different outfits. You can't deny that the guy is an incredibly fast Formula 1 driver. He's a double world champion for a very good reason at the end of the day. But yeah, even he can't rescue this car, which it just seems to be going further and further down the grid. The first quarter of the season, they were not too bad. Aston Martin on the whole, they were, you know, getting some good points finishes. They were beating the McLarens and the Ferraris every now and again, although not too regularly. And they were around where Mercedes were. And you look at where Mercedes have gone to since then. Mercedes have won, three of the last 4 races to end up all the way up and challenging Ferrari for that 3rd position in the Constructors' Championship. But since then, Aston Martin have just gone off the cliff. They've gone off the cliff like a Pirelli in 2013. It's just not worked out for them whatsoever. Lance Stroll, to his credit, I think has been better this season than he has been in previous seasons, but it's a very low bar to hit. I will say that he's been better. He has had some good results every now and again in that Aston Martin. And if you look at it purely from a race head-to-head point of view, 9-5 in Alonso's favour. That's better than it has been in the past. You know, I mean, you look at the qualifying record, for example, last season, Alonso beat him 19-3. I don't think it's been that much of a whitewash this season for Alonso in qualifying, and it certainly hasn't been during the race either. So for me, Stroll's been doing better. I don't think he's been doing enough though, because he's only just ahead of Nico Hülkenberg and Yuki Tsunoda in the Drivers' Championship by a few points. For me, he's too inconsistent still, and he's still making some relatively rookie errors, but I do think he's been better. Alonso, there's definitely an argument to say that he has regressed this season, but I feel like the car is the main cause of that. I think Stroll is performing where the car should be, or just below where the car should be, but Alonso is performing above it. So with that in mind, I'm going to give Aston Martin a D, because it has been disappointing. Yes, they are 5th in the Constructors' Championship, which is not a disaster, you would say, in itself, but the gap between them and Mercedes in 4th is ridiculous. Mercedes on 266 points. Aston Martin on 73, not 173, 73. Almost 200 points behind 4th place. And RB are not out of the question for beating Aston Martin through the second half of the season. 34 points for RB, 73 for Aston Martin. I think Aston Martin will be safe, but only just. And you think about the money that Lawrence Stroll is pouring into that team, the new factory, all the ambition there. It's just not working. It's not bearing fruit yet. Maybe it will in 2026. Maybe that's their big ambition. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, to be honest. Both of their drivers are tied down with their contracts until 26 at least. So yeah, we'll see what happens with them. I've given Alonso a B because I feel like he is outperforming the car more often than not. And Lance Stroll, I've given a D. I mean, I'd give him a D plus if I could. I feel like he's almost there in terms of a C. He's almost been there. But still, you have to say it's been disappointing. He's miles off his teammate, who is over 40 years old now. Yes, I know he's a legend of the sport, double world champion, one of the greatest of all time. But Lance Stroll should be hitting the peak of his powers now, and he's still nowhere near Alonso. So you have to put it down as disappointing. And you'd have to say that another driver, like a Yuki Tsunoda, would do better in that car. But there we go, guys. That's my take on Aston Martin. Let's head on to Mercedes next. So we're into the top 4 teams now, the dominant teams so far this season, picking up the lion's share of points at every single Grand Prix this season. And we start with Mercedes in 4th place overall. Now, Mercedes, if you asked me to grade them after the first quarter of the season, I probably would have given them a D, to be honest. I think they were quite disappointing, to say the least, really. They weren't that much ahead of Aston Martin, who I just reviewed now as well. But since then, the upgrade package has been working with them. It took all the way until Canada for them to get their first podium of the season. But since then, the pace of the car, particularly around high-speed circuits, has been so impressive. George Russell, yes, I admit he was fortuitous at the Austrian Grand Prix to win, but still picking up the pieces when Max Verstappen and Lando Norris collided to win his first race of the season, and also Mercedes' first race too. Then after that, Sir Lewis Hamilton, absolutely on merit, deserved to win the British Grand Prix. And then, of course, not a bad result for Lewis in 3rd in Hungary. No win for them there, but still getting a win at Belgium. And it would have been a Mercedes one too if it wasn't for that mistake with the tyres allegedly being the reason for that. I've done a full video on that. You guys seem to love that video. It's our best performing video actually on the YouTube channel, going over the real reason why George Russell was disqualified from the Belgian Grand Prix, apparently down to tyres basically. But if you want an in-depth discussion, that's on there. But the fact remains that Sir Lewis did manage to win that race, and Mercedes go into the summer break having won 3 of the previous 4 Grand Prix. They're in 4th place overall in the championship, which in itself I think is disappointing. They finished 2nd last year, so this is a big drop off from that in a sense. But it's so competitive. McLaren and Ferrari have really raised their game this year overall in terms of points tally. Still, it's a big points gap up to Ferrari, but given the pace of both teams, I think Mercedes are going to be the hot favourite to be able to get 3rd in that Constructors' Championship as things stand. I think that upward trajectory as well is a key factor in my decision making when it comes to the grades overall, because you might say it's recency bias, but this momentum, this improvement that they've shown, let's take the schoolroom setting, because I'm dressed like this. So if you start with absolutely no clue what you're doing at a certain class, and you work your way up to be, a pretty good or a passing student, a B grade student or whatever, for example, that shows real improvement. And I think that's impressive. And I think Mercedes' last 5-6 races, you'd be tempted to give them an A grade because of how much the car has been in terms of its performance. It's been extremely impressive. Overall though, you have to take everything into account, and at the end of the day, it was arguably a team error that caused George Russell to be disqualified from the Belgian Grand Prix, and they did start the season poorly as well. It was a big downturn in terms of the performance. So with that in mind, I'm kind of sitting on the fence a little bit with this, but I'm going to say Mercedes get a B grade overall, and I'm giving Hamilton and Russell a B grade as well. Hamilton I was tempted to give an A because of his recent victories, but at the same time, by his own admission, for the first part of the season, he was not performing on his A game, so I think it'd be a bit unfair to give him an A grade because of that. If I could go into certain like subgrades, for example, I would probably give him a B+. George Russell as well has been so unlucky at times. The retirement at Silverstone, the disqualification at Belgium. The disqualification at Belgium, despite what some people think, I don't think it's his fault. You know, he was going for the victory. If you're a Formula 1 driver and you're not going for the victory when you can get it, what are you doing? Like, he is doing what he does. He's a winning driver, and for me, he's shown that he's ready to lead Mercedes next year after Sir Lewis Hamilton leaves and after Kimi Antonelli probably comes into that second seat as well. So Mercedes, for me, if they overtake Ferrari and continue their upwards trajectory, if they get some more victories through the rest of this season, I'd be tempted to give them an A grade, but it's tough to grade them that high because they got second last year in the championship. It all depends how close they are to Red Bull. If they're beating Red Bull every now and again as well, I feel like that shows massive progress at the end of the day. So I've gone B's all around for Mercedes, and yeah, on to Ferrari next, which is sure to be a spicy one. So we're on to Ferrari now. Now Ferrari are a very difficult one to grade in my opinion. They are in the same position they were at the end of the 2023 season. They are third overall in the championship, and they are only just behind McLaren. They only just got passed during the Belgian Grand Prix for second place overall in the constructors. But then overall momentum in the second quarter of the season, if you will, has been pretty poor to say the least. You look early on in the season, Carlos Sainz getting an incredible win in Australia, a 1-2 for Ferrari. Ferrari pretty regularly getting onto the podium, but ever since Canada, when they had that absolutely abysmal weekend, team strategy was just completely out of the window during that one. It was hard to watch. It's not been good for Ferrari since then, and they only got podiums fortuitously, in my opinion, in Austria and Belgium because of a disqualification and because of the crash between Norris and Verstappen as well. If it wasn't for that, they wouldn't have been on the podium. In Belgium, they wouldn't have been on the podium despite Charles Leclerc starting on pole position, albeit only on pole position because of Max Verstappen's penalty for his engine change. So Ferrari are a really difficult one to cover because, you know, if you had asked me after Monaco, when Charles Leclerc won his home race, at last he managed to do it, I'd have given them a B at least. I would have given them a B at least. But as it is, I'm gonna just cut to it now. I might as well do. I'm gonna give them a C overall in this one, and I tell you why. Because I feel like they, in terms of where they are right now in the championship, they are at the absolute minimum of where they should be. And it might seem a bit strange saying that because Mercedes I gave a B despite being in fourth, but I feel like Mercedes have improved through this season, and that shows a real positivity. 3 wins for them, Ferrari with 2 wins, and it's just these little differences that make the difference. In terms of the drivers, I don't think the drivers are really to blame. Both have performed well. Yeah, you could argue they've made mistakes at times, but the team strategies by Ferrari, I mean, putting Charles Leclerc out as the only driver on hard tyres during the Canadian Grand Prix destroyed his race. And then they did the exact opposite during the British Grand Prix weekend, where Leclerc finished all the way down pretty much at the back of the field because they put him on intermediate tyres on a dry track. The team tactics have been baffling at times, you know, so I feel like as a team operationally, and the fact that they have declined through this second quarter of the season, that has to really count against them. And I think if I had to give them a subgrade, I would probably give them, you know, a C+, perhaps something more specific like that. I feel like they're almost there on a B, but, you know, despite them being 21 points behind McLaren, I don't think they're going to be looking up. They're going to be looking down for the rest of this season. They're going to be nervously looking over their shoulder at Mercedes because the momentum is with Mercedes. Ferrari have not got the momentum. They have to come out in the second half of the season swinging to maintain their third place. If they do that and they get second maybe, then yeah, they'll probably get a B or maybe even an A if they perform really well and get close to the top like constructors. But as it is right now, I don't really see them doing that. Next year, it's going to look positive as they're getting Sir Lewis Hamilton in, but you need, like Jean Todt, the former boss of Ferrari, said, you need more than that. You need a team that is working well together. But, you know, on the positive side of things as well for them, you know, they had Ollie Behrman come in and show that the future is very much bright for Ferrari, doing a standout job, in my opinion, to get that 7th place at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix at the start of the season. But yeah, Ferrari, I've got to give a C. The drivers, I'm giving both a B, both Leclerc and Sainz. I feel like they've done a good job overall, but the team and the car at times has just not been there for them to perform. It's just not been there. So that's my take on Ferrari, guys. I can totally see how people would give them a B, 100%, but I'm giving them a C because they expect more. They expect Tifosi expects them to challenge for championships, and with it is now, with the gaps in the championships right now, if they don't come out swinging in the second half of the season, it's going to have to go down disappointing. So I think I see right now on the fence, they're doing just enough, but they have to show more. They have to get more wins in the second half of the season. But yeah, there we go, guys. On to my team next, McLaren. Now, McLaren, second overall in the Constructors' Championship. They just passed Ferrari for that position. They've very much recently been the closest team to challenging Red Bull on a regular basis, but grading them is so tough in my opinion, not just for the team but also the driver, because McLaren, despite their incredible performance uptake, I mean, they've gone from 4th in the Constructors at the end of 23 to 2nd place and potentially getting so close to winning their first Constructors' Championship since 1998. Despite that, for me, it is not a slam dunk in what grade I'm going to give them, and I'll tell you why, because both McLaren and Lando Norris for me have made some mistakes throughout this season. Lando Norris notably making a mistake when it comes to Hungary, in my opinion. I think he should have followed the team orders straight away, given Piastri the place back and then challenged him, but as it was, he decided to let Piastri go, and this is something he's admitted himself as well after the race, that he should have let Piastri go straight away so then he can actually challenge for the first place position, because at that point they would have been free to race. Norris only got ahead because of McLaren's team strategy, which I believe also was a mistake. I don't think they should have pitted Norris early to cut off Lewis Hamilton like they did, because frankly the gap between Norris and Lewis Hamilton was so great that the chance of an undercut for Hamilton was basically nil. It wasn't going to happen, not at that point anyway, unless they left it like 5 laps or so. Also, on the team point of view, there have been mistakes when it comes to strategy. In Canada, you know, it seemed like they should have let Norris pit earlier than they did, but I believe he was pretty much past the pit lane at that point, so I will give him a little bit of a pass on that one. But the strategy during the British Grand Prix in particular was a big mistake. You know, they didn't double stack Norris and Piastri, and they also didn't pit Norris first, straight away when it was going from the wet tyres to the dry tyres in the latter stages, and because of that he got passed by Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, and they also put him on what I would say were the wrong tyres for those conditions. They should have either gone for the soft or the hard, but they went middle of the road in the medium, and it was neither here nor there in terms of the overall pace and the actual durability of the tyre. And what can't be denied is that right now McLaren have one of the fastest cars in Formula 1. For me, it's between them, Mercedes and Red Bull. They are all very close in terms of their overall performance. And if you look at the uptick in performance for a customer team to be beating Mercedes for the most part, beating them overall in the Constructors' Championship, so close to Red Bull, who dominated last year's championship. Like, Verstappen would have won the championship by himself. It didn't even need Sergio Perez to be there. They could have entered a one-car team. He's a one-man team pretty much at that point. So for me, McLaren to actually catch Red Bull and surpass them in terms of performance and be in with a shout of winning the Constructors' Championship, for me, I can't give them anything else other than an A grade. It'd probably be an A minus if I had to be specific with it, because of the mistakes. They've not been perfect, but the thing is, like I've spoke about before on these grades, they've set themselves up so well to challenge in the second half of the season. Momentum is massive in this sport, and Oscar Piastri getting his first win as well, I think is huge, and that for me has elevated him up to an A grade. I believe I gave him a B grade in my mid-season grades, but that was before the Hungarian Grand Prix. He's now won a race, and for me, he's so close to Lando Norris in the championship. I mean, what is it? It's 32 points at the moment, which is a decent gap, but that gap is coming down. That gap is coming down, and I think over the last 5-6 races, Piastri has been the highest scorer of any driver in Formula 1, even higher than reigning champion Max Verstappen. So for me, that's why I'm giving Norris and Piastri an A. I'd also give them A minuses just because Piastri's only just elevated himself to an A for me, and Norris himself has made some little errors. He has made some decisions that perhaps he shouldn't have done. in terms of his driving overall, but he is the closest challenger to Max Verstappen, and he finished second place to Max consistently for a while as well, keeping tabs with him, the only guy who could get close to him. So for me, that is why he gets an A. I totally understand if you want to give some of the drivers or the team a B. I would not argue that, but for me, because of the momentum of the team, because of how the drivers are doing right now, I'm giving them all A's. If they fall short in terms of the Constructors' Championship, or Norris and Piastri make some mistakes in the second half of the season, then I would downgrade them to a B. But as it stands right now, I'm giving McLaren A overall for their drivers and for the team as well. So let's head up to the last one, Red Bull. Right, Red Bull, we're nearly there, guys. The last of the 10 teams. Thank you for sticking with us through all these. Let's go through this. So Red Bull, for me, are another difficult team to grade overall because they started the season as undoubtedly the fastest team on the grid. You know, Max Verstappen winning 4 of the first 5 races. He would have made it 5 from 5 had that reliability issue not affected him at the Australian Grand Prix. And Sergio Perez too, in those 4 races that Max Verstappen won, he finished second 3 times and he got 3rd in the other ones. So he was showing that he was very much a good backup driver to Max Verstappen. But since then, things have changed. They've really changed. The rise of McLaren winning their first race of the season at the Miami Grand Prix, and later the rise also of Mercedes as well, has really challenged Red Bull going into this second half of the season. And as a result, their actual lead in the championship, in the Constructors' Championship, is just 42 points, which is not that big of a gap at all. Max Verstappen is absolutely carrying that team. You look at Max Verstappen's points, 277. He's 78 points ahead of Lando Norris in second place. But where is Sergio Perez? Perez is all the way down in 7th overall. And if it wasn't for George Russell's disqualification at the Belgian Grand Prix, I believe Russell would have put him down into 8th. So Perez would have been the worst driver from the top 4 teams in the championship, despite Red Bull being top of the Constructors' Championship. It's not a great look. There's also been all the rumblings behind the scenes with power struggles and this and that, and the controversy with Christian Horner, which I'm not really going to factor into this, but I feel like it has to be mentioned. There is absolute chaos behind the scenes at Red Bull, a real power struggle there. Max Verstappen's contract seems to be nailed down until 2028 now, because there was doubts about whether he would be at the team next season. We still in truth don't know who is going to be driving for the next season. Yes, Perez has a contract until 26, but ever since Perez has signed that contract before the Monaco Grand Prix, his pace has absolutely fallen off a cliff. And to be fair, the car as well, the upgrades they've been bringing for the car have not really improved it. It's not really shown it. Even Max Verstappen, you know, you look at his last few races, he's not won in 4 Grand Prix, which for him is a long time, you know, and only standing on the podium in one of those races too at the British Grand Prix. It's fair to say at times during this latter quarter of second quarter of the season, really, Red Bull have only had the 3rd best car at times. You could even argue they had the 4th fastest car at Silverstone, because Carlos Sainz was catching Max Verstappen in the early stages. So for me, this is going to factor into my grade, because for me, if you've gone from the most dominant car in Formula 1 history, because that's what the RB19 was, that is the most dominant car ever. It beat every stat for a team ever done. Anything that the peak Ferrari did in the early 2000s, or the McLaren in the late 80s, early 90s, nothing compares to it. Even their own incredible Red Bull car in 2013. I mean, the 2022 Red Bull car broke records for like Max Verstappen's consecutive win streak and things like that. So with that in mind, this is going to be a controversial one because they're top of the constructors, but I'm going to give Red Bull a B. I'm going to give Red Bull a B because you cannot argue that their car in particular has declined since the start of this season. And being 3rd in the constructor from being 1st in the constructors last year, when the regulations have pretty much stayed the same, you have to say that's disappointing. Yes, of course, they've been the best team overall, the top of the constructors. Max Verstappen is pulling out absolute miracles, and that's why I give him an A, because I feel, and this might be a hot take, this might be an unpopular opinion, I don't know, but I know a few people agree with me on this one, but I think that Max Verstappen is very much overperforming in that car. I think he's driving the absolute wheels off it, and that's part of the reason why he's been so angry and frustrated on the radio, particularly in Hungary, of course, because he's doing his absolute best out there, and he's not winning, and he hates that. He's a winning animal, that kid. He is an unbelievable driver, and if he's not winning, and it's not his fault, he's blaming the team, he's blaming the car, because frankly the upgrades have not worked. They have not worked. That car now is not really better than it was at the start of the season. Everybody else has improved. Everybody else has caught up. But for me, that's why I'm giving Verstappen an A. Red Bull a B. They have been disappointing in that sense. They have regressed, but they are still top, so you can't give them less than a B for that. Perez, there have been doubts about him being replaced mid-season. That is not happening. I'm giving him a D. I'm giving him a D grade because I feel like he's showing where that car probably should be. But at times, in particular, his qualifying pace has been abysmal in this second quarter of the season in particular, and that has to factor into it. And you also have to say that Max Verstappen's won what? 7 Grand Prix. Sergio Perez hasn't won one. Yeah, he hasn't won since like early 23, so he has to be disappointing for me. Borderline E grade, I would say as well. But that's my take, guys. That's Red Bull. That's all the teams that we've gone through. If you're on the supercut of this is the end of it. If you're watching just this clip of it, then go check out some more. We're going to put more up on the channel as we go along. But yeah, those are all the grades, guys. And yeah, we'll just fade into the outro now. Nice transition, I'm sure. So there you go, guys. Those are all the grades for all the teams on the Formula 1 grid, all 10 of them. Do you agree with them? Let us know in the comments below, as always, guys. And for anybody wanting to comment on this hat and how I'm not wearing it properly, I do apologise for that, but unfortunately my big head can only just fit in this. This is absolutely on the edge. So yeah, if I look ridiculous, that's kind of the point, really. It was a great idea to do this, do this in this outfit. Bit of a graduate teacher kind of thing. It actually would have come with a beard and glasses as well for you guys who stuck around right to the end. But as you can see, I don't need those props. I got them naturally, so there we go. But yeah, like I said, hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your thoughts are on the grades. Have I got them right? Have I missed the mark? I want to hear your opinions on these, of course, and what are your predictions as well for the second half of the season, heading into the Dutch Grand Prix, which is in a few weeks' time. Who's gonna be constructors champions? Who's gonna be drivers champions? Who's gonna win a surprise race? You know, let us know some bold predictions in the comments below, guys, as always. And of course, keep it subscribed here to the F1Chronicle.com. We've just passed 1,000 subscribers as well, guys. So you know that really allows me to do more content like this, less reactionary content, and just more kind of longer form videos, which I enjoy making more, to be honest with you, and I hope you guys like them too. But yeah, make sure to follow, subscribe, share, comment, and ring the bell as well. And of course, you become a member as well if you want to help support the channel financially on YouTube as well. So yeah, guys, we'll see you very soon for some more Formula 1 content.